All right, and we are live. Welcome back to Of Heroes and Men. Today I have a special guest, Kevin Benejam. Kev, how you doing, man?
Good man. How are you?
I'm
How are
doing
you?
good, man. I'm doing all right.
Having me, man.
What's that?
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, well, thanks for being here, bro. I wanted to bring you on. Obviously, you and I met at like a holiday party slash book release thing, and we started talking. We got into like a 45-minute conversation about some deep stuff, religion and God and career and life philosophy and stuff. And I was like, I gotta have this guy on, man, because he's got a lot of really great stuff going for him. Aside from the fact that you have great fashion sense, from where I'm from, it's called a dress code. It's got a good dress code. So
Yes,
tell us, man. Tell us like what's your background? Where you from? What's your story?
absolutely. Well, as far as the whole fashion thing, I always say to people, dress the way you want to be addressed. And first impressions is the only impression, right? Because you go inside of a room and you see that person, you're like, automatically you judge them in 5 seconds. Either that's someone that you want to talk to, or that's someone that you don't want to talk to.
Mm,
And unfortunately, our human brain is like that, where we say, oh, you know what, I might want to be friends with that person, or I don't. So for me, I know when I'm always going into networking or just events or daily, you never know who you're going to meet, and you never know who you're going to bump into. So that's why I always try to. I think for me, dressing is not just about just the fashion sense, but it's also about opportunities as
mm,
well. Because it's like you have to look at yourself as a gift. Do you want a gift presented to you in a bag, or do you want a gift presented to you in a nice gift wrap with a bow? Which one would you choose? You know,
right.
that's my philosophy behind, I guess, fashion and style.
I like that because it's like, say somebody were to give you, I don't know, like a notebook, right? Just like $11 notebook or whatever, and them just handing it to you, as opposed to taking the time to wrap it properly in nice paper with, like you said, a bow with tape and whatever. I think part of it is like you took the time to wrap the gift. It's still the same gift. The fact that you took the extra whatever minute and a half, 2 minutes to wrap it properly, and you took that extra care, it's kind of like it shows that you think the person that you're giving the gift to is important. So I like that. You're because I always believe that, like, when you dress well, you're telling other people, wherever I am with you, I have respect enough for you to present myself properly.
Right. It's self is exactly what you said. It's a form of self respect,
Right.
and people sense that, and more. People won't treat you better than you actually treat yourself. Um,
Correct.
what I've learned, or you get what you tolerate. If you tolerate something low, then that's what you're gonna receive. Even in the workplace, when people, example, if they want to start making jokes about you, or they talk about a certain subject that you don't want to speak about, and you put them aside and tell them about it, then they won't do that again. They'll know this guy has, you know, a high form of self-respect and values and standards that I I guess I don't have. So I have to make sure that I'm like that around him. So that I feel like that's a red thread for anything that you do in life.
Is that a philosophy that you always had, or is this something you had to develop?
Yeah, no, it's something that I definitely had to develop. I think for me, I'm in a stage where I had to get out of the people pleaser
Right.
uh stage, or for my whole life. For my whole life I always wanted to be liked by everybody. I have 5 sisters, but I'm my mom's only child, and I was mostly raised around women. And I did obviously I had a father too. I would see him every 2 weeks, but I would say this ideology of me always having to smile and say
Yeah.
yes to everything came from being around women, and then looking at my masculinity as something as triggering to them,
Yeah.
or something as encroaching on their freedom. Because my Puerto Rican family, and especially the women, they're tough women. They're like, oh, we don't need men. We can do it on our own. All of that. And
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying?
Oh, I
So
know what you're saying, bro. Dominicans,
yeah,
it's a little hop over that, you know what I mean, over the Caribbean Ocean. So it's
exactly. So for a long time in my life, I felt like I had to dumb down my power,
right.
dumb down my masculinity, dumb down my aggressiveness or my intensity, or even I was scared to, not conform, or scared to confront people. Like all of these things, I had to build the courage to develop daily. You
Mhm.
know, so it's a development process every single day, and if we're not conscious about it, we can fall back to what we were doing before. You know.
Yeah, and I think that that's actually a huge problem in just society at large now, the Western world for sure. There is this message like, "Oh, your masculinity is somehow encroaching on my freedoms," and da da da. And that argument never made sense to me. It's something that I heard growing up, my entire life. If you think about it, like you grew up in a house full of women. The majority of the people that hold power in my family are almost all women. But aside from that, all of our school teachers are women, right? From middle school, from elementary to middle to high school, and a university structure. And then everything around us in the last 30 years is basically telling you you're toxic, you're a rapist, like all these horrible things, right? And so you're just like, oh, well, I never saw myself that way. I'm just trying to exist. I'm trying to get through the day, and I'm not trying to hurt anybody. But you're getting a lot of these signals, and so these things get tamped down. And unfortunately, I think if someone is warped, or if someone doesn't have proper guidance, or someone doesn't have an outlet for it, it turns into something far more insidious and far. That's where the real danger comes in because you don't actually have an outlet, right?
Right.
Like little boys' aggressiveness is not intent to hurt other people. It's for them to understand the limits of their own mortality, right? You're
Hmm.
messing and pushing up against somebody else because you want to know. It's like, okay, how am I going to be able to handle myself when shit really goes down? And
Right.
it's also an outcrop of I need to protect the people that I love. So like
Hmm.
you can't your masculine aggression is not something you could just like shove away because you might need it someday,
Right.
right? And that's when you use it for good, and that's when you protect the people you love. It's when you protect your environment, it's your community, but also your country at some point.
Hmm. Absolutely.
And that was interesting that you brought that up because it's one of the things that I saw in one of your videos, and you sort of like something to alluding the fact you sort of like you had to sort of like has how am I going to put this like sort of suck the feminine energy out of yourself a little bit, like you had to like expel some of that feminine energy because you were like you didn't feel like it was okay. That's what I got from that video. You were
Mm.
like in front of a park or something like that. You were
Okay. Yeah.
saying,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know what I mean?
I'm here in City Island. You know where City Island is, by the way?
Yeah, it's East Bronx, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So it's a lot of greens here. So like during the summer, mostly did a lot of running around the parks. But I think that video. I think I was explaining how we can tap into our masculine and feminine energy in different areas
Uh-huh.
at different times because we have that. And I think it's also a social construct that just because you're a man means that you don't have uh, feminine energy as well. That is a social construct. As far as being female, I've seen a lot of times where there's an element to a relationship where the woman looks like it has a more of a dominant, energy, and the male has more of a less dominant energy.
Right.
Um, and I'm not saying that it should be that way, but I do observe that. But what I'm saying is, as an artist, and as you, Laris, you're also an artist. Like
Right.
sometimes when we can tap into our masculine energy to get things done
Hmm.
or to confront things. I get that masculine when I work out when I, do a lot of things that just cause me to go or push or save the world and stuff. But a lot of times, feminine energy, I sense that feminine energy if I'm dancing. Sometimes if I have to let go, or in an acting scene, or let go, just to let God sometimes. Or sometimes when like example, if you're out all day working and then you come home and then you have family, you have to learn how to turn uh that beast mode aggressiveness
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
off, and learn how to listen, learn how to be present, learn how to um you know just be there for people. So I think that's it's like an art of
Right.
like, and that's why I say, we always should pray for discernment and wisdom, because we don't know exactly when we should actually use those type of energies. But that also comes with self-awareness, because sometimes people don't have that self-awareness, and they use one personality, one the same tone of speaking for every situation,
Hmm.
and that can get you into trouble. Because if you use the same tone at work to your wife, then you're going to get in trouble. As I've seen in my dad, he uses the same tone that he, talks to his coworkers to his family sometimes, and it's like, dude, we're not, like, why are you speaking to us like that? Like, I think it's all about inflection. It's all about the the heart posture of how you say things as well.
Right. Now, going back, was there a specific catalyst where you said, I need to develop a little bit more of my masculine because this feminine energy is something isn't working for me in this particular. Was there a moment where you had an epiphany and you were like, hold on a second, something that I'm doing? Because in order for you to say, I need to change this, or at least I need to stick up for myself, or for you to have that revelation, something must have happened and triggered in you where you realize there's a deficiency here.
Mm.
Was there a moment, was there a particular thing that really launched that and caused you to get back in touch with that or to develop that aspect of yourself?
Yeah, I think what happened was that I got as soon as I kept getting closer to God and reading more of the Bible, and getting mentored by just men who live on biblical principles,
Mm,
I started to realize that I necessarily was living a lot of my life in the dark, or blind, and
hmm.
living with the principles of the culture
Right.
rather than principles, biblical principles, but biblical principles meaning that God designed us in a specific way. So if I'm not living or acting the way I'm designed to be, then there's going to be a problem. And I was experiencing problems, not just in my health, but also sometimes with my relationships, or sometimes you're like, wait, something is off here. Like, I have
Right.
to figure out what is going on. So when I started to, go to therapy and stuff, and I started to realize, oh, like my whole upbringing, like, you know, the stage from 0 to 10, that's the most fundamental, stage that develops our mind and our outlook on life.
Those are the formative years for sure.
Yeah. So I had to realize what was I thinking about? I mean, how was I formed during those times, with what principles, with what outlook in life. So what I started to do was basically strip myself, unlearning what I learned, and then
Mm,
learned how to live with these biblical principles, such as, you know, one thing that blew my mind was, when I learned, less than 2 years and even a year ago, I was reading this book called gosh, I forgot the name of it. it'll come up. But it's about men getting back to how men are supposed to be, in not just in this nation, but in this world.
Right.
And it was backed up by the Bible, how the Bible said the order of the order should be, it should be God, then Jesus, then a man, than a woman. And this is not sexism. I'm not saying that we're supposed to be better than women, but fundamentally, we're supposed to lead our families and women and our communities spiritually. We're
Right.
not just supposed to take care of them, fiscally, monetarily. We're supposed to take care of them spiritually. So when I learned that, and I learned that that was actually in the Bible, I was like, I have a lot of work to do, because for me, growing up, I was always looking to women to, um, I guess, push me or motivate me, and we can still use that. But I think what I'm trying to say is, I knew I had a lot more work to do internally, um, because I was like, oh, like I'm gonna wait for my wife so we can have like a, Beyonce and Jay-Z power couple. And
Mm-hmm.
now I'm open to maybe not even having that power couple, where it's like I'm open to being the person and the man to lead.
Mm-hmm.
If the women, if my wife or future wife can't, or is not, capable of leading a business. I was like, oh, I need a woman to lead a business. I need a woman to be a billionaire. Like that was my thinking. And I'm like, why?
Yeah.
Why am I thinking that way? Is it because, am I inadequate, or is it right? But also too, there's a principle that, sharpen irons,
Right.
iron sharpens iron. So I want to be someone that's on my level. Absolutely, you want to be someone on your level. But what I am saying though is that I'm still open to, um, seeing whatever happens.
Yeah, that resonates a lot with me. And basically, you've elucidated what I think a lot of young men and men in general for the last, I think, 3 generations for sure have struggled with. And it was what I was, I think, saying to before, is like all of the authority figures in men's lives, basically until they get out of college, are women.
Yeah.
Elementary school, middle school, high school, and then university system. So I think it's like, and I taught in the Department of Education, so it's like every 9 out of 10 teachers is a woman, or some ridiculous number. 8 out of every 10 is a
Yeah.
woman. So if you hear that the whole time, if you see that the whole time, right, like you just assume that a woman is the authority, and that's only been true in the last 3 generations. Before that, men took the boys out and they taught them how to hunt and to fish and to farm, and how to crack jokes and to talk shit and how to deal with women, and you know what I mean, like, right? Yeah, like men went and they taught the boys how to do that stuff. Like the boys were separated from their mothers, but now boys are never separated from their mothers, and you got 40-year-old virgins living in their mother's basement, and that's just not the way it's supposed to be. And so you're also getting that message in the culture, right, from all the films and the movies and stuff like that. And part of the reason why I call this Of Heroes and Men is because I don't think young boys worship heroes anymore. And I mean real
Mm.
heroes. I mean guys that like go out and do they commit amazing feats.
Mm.
And I'm thinking about just not even in mythology, regular guys. Like I was watching a couple documentaries on World War I.
Mm.
That's my favorite war to
Uh,
reference. I love that war, partially because I just love that era in general, but
mhm.
partially because it was a frightening experience fighting in the trenches. And the men that really went over the top, right? I mean, they basically knew 2/3 of those guys were going to be dead after the charge, but they
Mhm.
went over, right? There was an incredible amount of bravery to do that stuff. And I think there is something in the masculine that needs to be challenged in that way and scared out of his mind, and then survive that frightening experience and
Mhm.
then live to tell it. That's integral in our psychological development. And you can't get that in an environment with only women. It's
Absolutely.
impossible to get it because they're not pushing you to do that. There
Right.
are civilizing elements of females that I think are really important to civilization in general. And I think the most civilized aspects of our society are either a direct result of women or an appeal to women,
Mhm.
right? Men make things safe so that women and children can flourish. We don't do it for us. Like we can all live in practically we can live in a cave or out in a field somewhere and we'll be all right. You know what I mean? But like we make things nice and safe and comfortable so that women and children can come in and be incubated and be taken care of. So the thing you were talking about, like I like really waiting for a woman to sort of be the authority. The man, in my opinion, and in Christianity, is the spiritual head of his family.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not like people think of that and they think of like tyranny.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're like, oh yeah, you're trying to control me. You're trying. I was like, no, but you got to understand that with that sort of authority comes immense responsibility. You can't. Nobody who's ever been a boss or ever led people in anything that's been an effective leader has been a tyrant, because you can't do it. You have to understand. First of all, you're serving them; they're not serving you. Secondly, you have a responsibility to them, and third, you need to be so much further ahead of the people that you're the leader of that there is no respite for you. There is no rest. It's why God said to Adam, your burden is not work.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And that is something that's lost, I think, in our culture, because we got a lot of lost boys. And I'm not going to lie, man. I was definitely one of them for a long time. I'm coming out of that now.
Yeah.
But I didn't understand the burden of work, what it really meant to be the work, what it really meant to be the leader, what it really meant to be spiritually good, so that everyone else behind me and underneath me is also good.
Right. Right. That's good. Yeah, because I think also too, like just because we say that men are the spiritual heads doesn't mean that women aren't equal. We're doesn't mean that we're better than them. Doesn't mean that women are better than us. But that's why God called women our helper. Like we needed a helper. We can't do it on our own. So we actually, God has called us to love our wives just as much as we love ourselves, because we two become one.
Right.
So it's a 50-50 thing, but everyone has their role. We have different roles. And so when you see women in roles right now that are actually meant for men, then that's when you're seeing a lot of women right now. If you look up pregnancy or miscarriages, it's amongst the highest it's ever been.
Sure.
Because women aren't supposed to be doing what they're actually doing right now, as far as doing all the things that men are supposed to be doing. So it's like it's just super interesting to me. To I never thought I would have this ideology, but I do believe that it is sound, and I do believe that it will hopefully make men great again. I was actually looking at the book. It was called it's called Kingdom Man by Tony Evans. Tony Evans is also a great speaker, and pastor. But yeah, so those are like kind of some of my ideas on that.
Right. So let's talk about, because there's an element of manhood that peacocking is really important, I think, right? And so, and by peacocking, I mean showing, displaying like a peacock, like your feathers,
Yeah.
displaying your value in a robust way, so that other people can actually take notice of it. And going back to your fashion, I think that for a man, there's a book called, God, I can't remember, something about the look of power or something like that. The guy talks about, I got to look it up again and I'll remember it, but he talks about throughout all of human history, how men displayed power was through their physical, either through a crown or some sort of feather dress or something like that, or medals, even in the military. Your fashion, how does it affect the way that you're perceived in terms of, do you think, if at all, the power that you exude? I mean, you're a pretty tall guy. What are you, like 6'1", 6 foot?
No, I'm like between 5'11" and 6. Yeah.
Well, you stand taller than that. When I met you and stuff like that. So when people see your fashion, because I know you got the big coats and stuff. I mean, it's fly, right?
Yeah.
How does it affect, do you think, the perception of who you are and the authority that you possess when you meet other people?
Yeah, I think honestly that's why I say I remember when I first started the whole fashion thing, like in 2016. I always say the right coat is everything.
Right.
You can have a mediocre, outfit, but then put a really nice coat on. And number one, through research, but also through my own experience, when you have something nice on, it also affects your psychology. Uh,
Mm.
it affects that's why they call it thinking cap. Put on your thinking cap because if you wear a certain cap, you're gonna think a certain way. Like I could put on a Yankee fitted right now, and I'll think I'm, back in like sixth grade, about to just, start strapping 50 Cent,
Yeah,
you
yeah, yeah.
know what I'm saying? And uh, but I always say people try it. You wanna have a little more femininity. Put on a skirt, and you will feel very interesting. So the thing is, my experience with wearing coats or with wearing fashion, certain pieces is when I'm out there, I'm either getting compliments, people are more receptive to what I have to say. Uh, the opposite sex is more interested in me because it looks, you're more interesting, um, and it it's just like I can't go any other way except for that because I've experienced, sometimes me wearing something that I don't resonate with or something that that's not, bold. Like for me, I'm the type of person that I always wear bold things.
Hmm.
I just think that's just my personality. Even when I was a young kid, like that's just who I was. So when I don't wear bold things, and I don't feel like myself. And when
Right.
you don't feel like yourself, there's no way that you can connect with people in an authentic way. Um, you know, so that's kind of like my perception on that. But I have heard about peacocking where men are actually the ones that's supposed to be, the standout with their
Yeah.
with their outfits and their, accessories and, whatever it is. But I feel like, and women are great at doing that. Obviously, women are doing that now. But what I'm saying is like men, I think nowadays men have gone the other way where like most of them are all bland now.
Right. Yeah.
Oh, like, uh, it's okay to be uncomfortable. I think we have to be. How I started getting better at fashion was I started putting on things that I thought I could never wear, and then when I put it on, I'm like, oh wow, I could actually wear this. It actually looks good, and you just start experimenting. So I think experimenting is also big as well. But I think you should also fashion is not for every man or for every woman. Like you should also be how can I say this? You should also do things according to your personality and your true nature. Because I think for me, one of my biggest natural gifts, as Steve Harvey says, your gift is something that you could do naturally. Um, the best naturally is just dressing. Um,
Mm.
that's how I've been as even when I was in Catholic school. I, I went to Catholic school since I was pre-K to 12th grade, but I would still play around with my shoes and my shoelaces and my ties. I would wear like really cool cartoon ties, and people will laugh at. Like I will always have this. I will always have to express myself no matter what. And
Mm.
then on dress down days, that's when it was a wrap. I was like, I gotta wear something good. So that was fashion has always been something to me where if anything ever happens, that's always my like foundation. Um, that's like my number one skill or passion.
And that's great, man. You also have a very sort of eclectic background. I mean, you've done marketing, you've done obviously you've done interview stuff, expose things. You've also been an actor. You've also, I think, worked in furniture stuff like design, right? Isn't that what you were telling me at the party?
Yeah,
Interior design.
yeah. So basically, I could tell you like I guess a little bit about my background. Long story.
Yeah.
Um, I graduated from Brooklyn College when I think it was 23. So while I was in my senior year, I was interning for a commercial real estate firm. So around that time, I really loved, growing up. I mean, Trump was my idol. Uh, from The Apprentice to reading his autobiography, and it correlated with my grandfather because my grandfather was also in real estate
Mm.
and investing. So I was like, oh, I want to be like the next Trump, way before everyone listens to this, way before he became president. All right. And by the way, I'm not left or right, so, uh, so yeah, so I really was like, I really want to be like this guy. So I was interning at a commercial real estate firm in Brooklyn. And I was like, you know what? If I'm really gonna do this real estate thing, I want to do luxury real estate. Want to sell these really high end homes and this and that. And so I finally got interviewed for a boutique real estate luxury firm in Manhattan in Midtown. I started working for them. I became like a rookie of the year there, and within a year and a half time, I was inducted into like the number one team there,
Mm.
and we became number 50 on Wall Street Journal's list of like best selling real estate teams in America.
Wow.
Um, so I got a lot of experience. Kid from the Bronx. I learned around that time how to relate to clients and how professionalism. I saw so many bank statements, like millions of dollars. Like I'm like, dude, I at that time I was like, I had like $100 in my bank account. I'm like, dang, like I need to step it up. Like,
Yeah, yeah.
and I just saw another world that was open to me. And I saw that money was always out there. So while I was doing that, a couple years in, I was doing good at it, but I just felt that something was missing. Around this time, I actually didn't know I was an artist. I didn't think I was creative, even though every time I would go somewhere, people were like, "Yo, you're always the best dressed person," this and that. I'm like, what are you talking about? Doesn't everyone dress like this? Like, but I didn't. A lot of times people don't know their gift because it comes
Yeah.
so naturally to them. It's
Yeah.
right in front of your face. And I was like, you know what? Let me see what I can do with this. So around that time, 2014, that's when I started posting on Instagram, not just my outfits, but also me and like open houses or like my real estate listings and like stuff like that. And I was also using the leverage of my real estate firm and also my team of
Mm.
like showing these $1 million homes. And I was gaining so much social capital on Instagram around that time that people were like, "Wow, he's selling $1 million homes and he dresses so well." Um, so that is how I built a brand on social media and Instagram. So what I found out around that time was my two biggest interests was fashion and social media marketing. So what I started to do was I started getting a lot of clients through social media, and I started helping other real estate agents and other businesses with their social media, with their clients as well.
Mm.
And that is how I got into like my own marketing agency, and I started creating content for other brands, but also my own brand. I had like around 40,000 followers around the time, and so that was like what most of my time was. I was partnering with brands. I became a GQ insider. Um, I dove into the fashion industry, but also still marketing other brands and social media marketing as well. And I was kind of letting go of the real estate because even though there was money to be made there, I'm not actually really motivated by money. I'm more motivated by purpose, creativity, and values. So I just had to leave what I was doing as a real estate agent around that time. So around that time, like this was already about 2018. I I was like starting this show called On Trend,
Yeah.
and I wanted to interview the most influential people in the fashion industry. And I don't know, for some reason around that time, I was getting like my energy was getting off. Like I couldn't really go to the gym anymore. I was like, what's going on? Like I thought maybe I'm just tired or and then I just started getting sick every week, like fevers and stuff. I'm like, yo, what is going on? Started going to the doctors. Doctors, oh, you're just fine. Just just get some rest and this and that. And um, so this was like 2018 going to 2019. There was about 2 months where I completely collapsed, where I was bedridden for like a month. For
Oh
like,
wow.
I thought I would look at myself in a mirror. You could see in my eyes that I just wasn't well, and I really thought like, whoa, like I don't, I think am I gonna die or something? Like I felt horrible. Like I literally couldn't even walk. Like that's how weak I was. And I go to the doctor. They took more blood tests. They said it might have been mono and stuff like that. But long story short, what happened was I had an autoimmune disorder that came from not sleeping, not eating right, and now a couple of years later, I've learned that it just wasn't that those things. It was because I was in the wrong industry.
Mm.
I was on social media too much, and it was draining my energy, which I thought was like, and I think something what you said was like, you were in acting, you're like forcing it, you're pressing it, and
Right.
this wasn't work for some reason. Like that's how I was in like like I was basically influencer, and like I was trying to get to like 1 million followers, but for some reason I was trying to like everything I was doing just wasn't working. You
You're like
know
grinding. It's like
exactly.
grinding. The gears are grinding. You're not making. There's no momentum, no traction.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The show, um, I was still going to try to make it happen. And for some reason, like I was sending out all these emails trying to get guests, and I would never get emails back. I would feel horrible and convicted sending these emails. I'm like, what is going on? Like,
Right.
am I not supposed to be doing this then? Like,
Hmm.
it's just confusing to me. So around that time, my health was completely down the tubes. My income was basically sacrificed because I couldn't do much, and that also goes into my mental health. Whereas like if that's not happening, then like my mental health went down the drain too.
Right.
So I was completely down on like zero, and the only thing that I knew that I could do at that time was just go to church on Sunday. That's the only thing. That was like my only light that I had around that time.
Right.
Around this time, I went to Hillsong, and I just started going consistently, and because that's how God gets your attention. Like God knew that I have such a strong will that I can do anything I want. That the only way that He can get my attention and get me into His way of thinking and living is if He completely shuts everything down. And that's what He did for me. And it's similar to, actually, I could send you this. I don't know if you know Mark Francesi. He used to be like one of the top mob mob guys.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I've seen that guy. Yeah, he did.
Value Entertainment.
Right. Yeah, I've seen him. I've seen it on YouTube. Yeah, I know what you're talking
So
about. I know what you're talking.
I actually heard his testimony about Christ yesterday, and it was
Right.
crazy, dude. Like I didn't know he was that like into Jesus and sanctification.
Yeah, it saved his life.
Yeah,
He was a legit mob boss. Saved his life.
yeah. And I wasn't I wasn't necessarily um, you know killing people or anything like that, but my heart wasn't in the right place. My motives wasn't in the right place.
Right.
One thing I also forgot to say was like at age 24, my grandfather gave me his like $4 million real estate portfolio to manage. I completely let that go down the drain because I was
Oh.
I was just like basically like I didn't let it didn't fall on his part, but like it was I let the opportunity go on my behalf.
Mm.
And I just felt like I wasn't living in the right way, even though I had all these great opportunities. So that is how God said, this is the only way you need to go. So I started going to church, started going consistently, started reading the Bible. And then this was like about 2019. That is when I started to realize, whoa, um, I see the contrast between how I was living versus how I should be living.
Right.
And now I'm in the space where I'm like living in the will of God. But before, even though I was successful, I was not living. I wasn't living in the will of God, but He allowed me to go through all those things because I've learned so much about myself, about creativity, about fashion, about all of these beautiful things that now I'm using for my advantage and for His glory. But as far as like the acting thing, when I started getting better, I was like, you know what? Something I've always wanted to do is acting. I took a drama class in high school, but I said, you know what? Let me go to an acting class. I took my first acting class. At the end of it, my teacher was like, all right, Kevin, so how long have you been acting? I said, this is my first class. He was like, really? And I was like, okay, this is a sign that I should keep on doing this. But what acting gave me was it opened up my creative appetite to not
Mm.
just acting, but also my my creativity in myself, just other art forms, whether it's music and writing. Um, so God will use anything to for your advantage and for His advantage. So
Yeah, man. And that ties into so first of all, thanks for sharing that. Yeah, the conversation we were having at the party was like your body's telling you everything, right? Like like if things are going wrong, if something is amiss, like it just doesn't feel right. There's a reason that we have these feelings, and if your body's telling you that, if God is speaking through you, if that's the way He had to do it, so many people ignore that for years, for decades, right? And they
yeah,
never actually end up pivoting and course correcting because their ego is saying, I'm doing this thing and this is what I'm supposed to be doing. And you get caught up in the bells and whistles of it, you know what I mean? And then you lose track of what it is you're supposed to be doing. And we have these markers that give us signals all the time. What was that one story? It was like the guy that was drowning, and he was out in the middle of the ocean, whatever. And then there was like I think there was like a ship that came by, and the guy's like, no, 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 I'm waiting for so and so, whatever. And then another ship came by, and another ship came by, or whatever. And the guy ended up dying. And then he got to heaven, and the guy's like, God, why didn't you help me? He goes, I sent you all these ships. Like I sent you all this help, right? And I'm messing up the metaphor, but you know what I mean. Like people, we keep signals, rafts, life rafts keep being sent to us, and if
right,
we ignore them enough times, then that's it. The story's over.
right,
Um, but it reminds me of a thing that you said in one of your videos about creativity, where you were talking about, you were quoting somebody else actually, and you said creativity is like if you turn on a faucet that hasn't been turned on in a long time, what
mm-hmm.
comes out is like gunky, dirty, nasty water, but eventually it becomes sort of, it starts to work through it, and clean, drinkable water starts coming through. And I've definitely felt that way when I haven't performed in a long time, or I haven't been creative in a long time. I'm like, damn, man, like, do I not know how to do this? Do I not know how to act? Do I not know how to do this thing, X, Y, and Z? And no, it's just you haven't done it for a while. But then I find that the more I create, the more I can create.
Right,
You know what I mean? Like I put together one of these interviews, and then I have three more lined up after that, where I didn't have one a month ago. And so or I have an idea for a video or something to do, and all of a sudden I have 6 other ideas
Mm-hmm.
coming to me, or I write one script about one story and I have 10 other stories behind it.
Right.
And so for me, what I gathered from that is, and which is really important, and tying it back to the thing, it's just like, when you need to make that course correction or when you need to move in the direction, just move in the direction.
Mm-hmm.
These things will be revealed to you. And what's that old quote is, I see by faith, not by sight.
Right.
And that's I think that's difficult in our hyper materialistic world, because we're accustomed to saying, well, if it isn't right in front of me, it doesn't exist.
Right.
Right? If I can't touch it, feel it, if I can't upload it to Instagram and somebody like it, then it didn't happen.
Right.
And it's like the there would be no innovation, there would be no visionaries, there would be no new anything if
Right.
people didn't say, well, I'm just gonna go do this thing, and without evidence, you just go and do it. And this is something else on trend, which is something that you mentioned, was like Howard Schultz. And I guess people told him that he was crazy for doing Starbucks, but he's like, yeah, well, I'm gonna do this thing. This is what I believe in.
Yeah.
And imagine if he had listened to all those people and not listened to himself, not listened to his gut,
Right.
not listened to the voice above him telling him, like, dude, this is what you need to be doing. Because it doesn't make any rational sense.
Right.
But it makes spiritual and emotional sense to do the thing.
Right.
And so you got to do it anyway.
Right. If it's in your heart, you have to.
Right.
You have to do it.
And well, the thing is, too, I love that you said heart, because in our modern world, we're in our heads all the time. You know what I mean? And people like to talk about empathy and inclusivity and da da da. Those are all bullshit ideas. They don't actually mean anything, because so many people keep saying them.
Right.
It's like racism. It's like, what does racism even mean anymore? If everybody's a racist, the lady gave you an attitude on the bus, all of a sudden she's a racist. Well, I guess racism doesn't really exist, because you're just using it for anything now. But the heart, man, Braveheart's one of my favorite movies. And The Father, do you remember the movie? Did you ever see it?
I saw a long time ago. But
so that's the movie that made me want to be an actor, right?
Hmm.
I saw that movie at 10 years old and I freaked the fuck out, because I was like, what is this shit? This is awesome. like this is the greatest thing ever. But anyway, in the scene, the father dies and William Wallace is dreaming. And the father sort of is on his bed. He's got this slash across his chest, because that's how he was killed. And William is a boy, and it's the dream sequence. And the father turns to him, sort of wakes up. The corpse wakes up, and he goes, like, have the courage to follow your heart. Is basically what he says to him. And I don't ever hear people talk like that anymore.
Right.
You know what I mean? Not your emotions. That's different. Your heart. Like, have the heart to say it. Have, the guy had heart. You ever heard that phrase? Like when when you were younger, it's like the guy had heart. I don't ever hear somebody saying, damn, that dude had a lot of heart.
Yeah. I know what you're saying. Like I remember there was one time there was like this girl in this like church group that I was part of, and she said she kept calling me Lionheart. I'm like, man, that sounds cool. I like that.
Yeah.
You know, because I exuded like this boldness and stuff, and I think courage. I mean, even to this day, courage is a thing that we have to constantly be pushing every single day, because I've noticed that, like, I'm like, oh, I conquered this feat, and I'll just chill for a week, and I have to go back into that courage mode.
Right.
It's so hard to get back into that mindset, into that courage mindset. But back then, the only way you can be courageous is, not necessarily, writing in your journal or thinking about it. It was literally going out and taking action against your enemies.
Correct.
That is how you develop courage. I was reading about in this African community, before you get married, they would have the men getting whipped on their skin, bleeding, but they would have to smile or not show any pain in their face while they're getting whipped, in order to develop that tough skin courage that they needed in order to lead a family and be courageous for their communities. Uh, Imagine if we implemented that now, people would be like, that would be too crazy, right? But it's just a sign of like how much courage men needed back then, how much courage we all needed back then. And
Right.
then now, what courage do you need? Just send an email or send a text.
Right.
I mean, to each his own, right? God gives everyone what they need according to their ability, according to what you're called to do. But um, I think that if we don't have courage and if we look at fear right in front of the face and we go towards the fear rather than retreat, fearful just means retreat. So if you live a life of fear, that means you're living a life in retreat.
Mm.
And everything, as you know, in the Bible is all about, well, for me, I look at it as like war strategy. Like we have an enemy every single day. The enemy is going to get in your head. He's
Right.
going to try to get in your circumstances.
Right.
So that's why we have to renew our mind every single day according to God's will. As it says Romans 12:2, renew your mind according to the will of God, don't conform to the world, but conform to God's will. Because we conform to the world, we're just going to get the same circumstances that the world is producing. But if we conform our minds to God's will, then we're going to get what is it called? Not just circumstances, but we're going to get results that sustain the test of time and that produce fruit and that have a firm foundation. As it says in Matthew, the fool is the person who built their house on a foundation of sand.
Mm.
But if you build your foundation on everything that I've told you to do, then the waves and the wind is going to come. It's going to try to crash, but your house and your foundation won't go away. So if we build our lives on these principles, then we're gonna have a life that has a firm foundation. That no matter what's gonna happen, and that's the thing. Jesus said that there will be trouble, but he's gonna be with you no matter what. So
Right.
I used to be this person who's like, oh, positive thinking. Yes, we have to think positive. We have to always have that positive mindset. But with wisdom, you understand that, as it says, the crown doesn't last forever, right? As it says in Proverbs, you have to understand that you might be hot for a couple of years, but save that money, put it in investments, put it in, keep that there, develop your health, develop your relationships, because all that could be gone tomorrow.
Right.
And what are you going to have? So I'm about thinking big, but now I'm all about how can I also hedge my losses and think about the future at the same time, and about investing in my finances, investing in other businesses, and investing in my health. Like I look at the gym or doing exercise as every time that I'm investing, like I'm putting a couple dollars into my
Right.
health bank account.
Correct.
And that's how you have to look at it. But yeah, I think there's that. Well, what was your question? I think I just went off on a tangent.
No, it was a great tangent, man. I think you answered it. I want to touch on the thing that you said about God. There's this thing now that the notion is that sort of there is no universal truth, which is horseshit, because there is. There are principles that are always true, and they've always been true, and they will always be true, right? And so, if you reap what you sow, right? Like, that's always true. You can't get an apple tree planting pear seeds. It's just not going to happen. But the notion of God and Jesus always being with you, right, is this thing of the spirit. I think the spirit is man's highest form. This flesh will melt, it will dissolve, we will be buried, and our bones will turn to dust, right? But our name lives on, our legacy lives on, what we've left behind lives on, which is why it's so important to make sure that you have your shit together and you have that, like you said, solid foundation before you think about having a family, before you think about like taking on some sort of an endeavor. Make sure that your side of the street is clean, that you're good to go, because what you do leaves ripples in time to everybody around you, right? We are stuck in this really material world. And again, I am not against materialism. I am a capitalist. I do believe that if you can get it, get it.
Right.
I'm not like, take Jeff Bezos' money away. That shit makes no sense to me. He's made everybody else's life easier, right? Like, I'm not mad at the dude.
Yeah.
And I want Bugattis and Ferraris and nice houses. I want those things. I want 10,000 acres in DR with 16 Andalusian horses, okay? That's like my life's dream.
Right.
But the spiritual life is lost on much of the people today in the Western world. And the spiritual life, in order for you to live a healthy spiritual life, you must transcend your own mortality. This thing that will die, and it will be no more. So the notion of setting that foundation, you're talking about like reaching on high, but also hedging your best. What I get from that is, you want to reach high, you want to be ambitious, but you also want to make sure that the foundation, the concrete is laid, it's all even. You pick good wood, right, to make to have the frame of the house. You make sure that the rivets all make sense. You make sure that all the rooms are done and built appropriately. You want to take your time with it. There's a reason Jesus Christ was a carpenter, and that's not an accident. And that's something that we were talking about. It's just a carpenter can't lie. I assemble furniture, right? That's just one of the side hustle, side jobs that I do. If I assemble something incorrectly in step 1, by step 23, I realize, oh my God, in step 1 or 2, I fucked up.
Right.
I didn't assemble something correctly, right? And that's simply because I didn't take my time. Right? Everybody, we're living in an age right where it's like everybody's speeding up and hurrying up. And I think the speed is important, but speed is important when you realize how to actually, when you get the proper technique down to run quickly. You know what I mean? Yeah. And that comes from, I'm like sort of mixing metaphors here and stuff like that. But I had a voice and speech teacher. And she said she was teaching us how to scream. We're born knowing how to scream, but as life goes on, we forget what we already know how to do naturally. And she goes, the higher you, because I was having a hard time, and she was like, the higher you scream, the deeper you dig. And I took that to mean is like, I got to make sure that my roots, my foundation, everything is deep and it's sturdy in order for me to climb as high as I want to go. Right? This applies to all rules of life. And that's the notion of religion, and the Judeo-Christian principle is, in order to reach up to God, to reach up to heaven, we must be grounded.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And I think for men, we lack groundedness, that connection with the tractable parts of life,
right?
The foundation. And I think a lot of men are sort of, there are a lot of like lost boys out there, man.
Oh yeah, I was one of them for sure.
For sure, man. And again, part of me creating this is because this is me attempting to have conversations with other men to fill in the gaps that I didn't necessarily have when I was coming up. And I had a father in the home. But definitely the women ran the roost, man. I mean, it was like the whole family is run by women. And to be honest with you, for a man, I think for a man to be constantly surrounded by women, it's akin to him living in hell. And it's not a knock on the women. It's if he doesn't have the masculine frame there to really show him this is what it is, man. And I'm a strong masculine man who is an authority, who commands respect, who is competent, who is brave, who is courageous, who serves as the model for him. He becomes lost. Because we as men, we need to, like you were saying, that village, the men initiated him into that. They go and they whip the boy and they go, look, you're a man. You're going to have to put a fucking smile on your face or you're getting your ass kicked from life. It's people look at that like, oh my God, that's so savage. No, it's not. They were preparing them for the realities of manhood, which is shit is fucked up. People might try to kill you. Shit's going to get real. And you need to be prepared to handle that. Right? Like nobody's going to come to your aid. You're not a boy anymore. You're now a man. There was that line in Corinthians about putting down everything. I forgot the name of it, but basically it was like I was a boy and I put down all the boyish things, all the childish things, and then I became a man. Like, and that's the sacrifice. And we as men, we live in the, I think a woman's realm is the realm of life. She gives life, she nurtures, she food comes out of her body, da da da. A man's is death. We have been tasked with the burden of working, slaughtering animals, slaughtering other men in warfare,
Hmm.
also killing the parts of ourselves that are weakest, so
Hmm.
that we can transition into taking the mantle and taking responsibility for this life and everybody else around us while we're here. Because we're only here, what, like 80 years, 85 years if we're lucky
Right.
in the first world.
Yeah.
So, what does it look like for you, your future, right? Like, now that you've had this transition, you're raised in an environment where there are a lot of women, but you came to the realization, you know what, something is amiss here. I need to remedy the situation. You've done the work on yourself. You were a lost boy. Now it seems that you've found yourself. You've come into your own. What does the future look like for you now that you have faith and that you seem to be headed in the correct direction?
Yeah. Um, I love what you said, by the way. As far as the higher you go, the deeper the foundation. Like
Right.
even doing real estate and new development, when you build, the higher the skyscraper is, the deeper the foundation needs to be
Yeah, for sure.
as well. And it takes longer. You want to build a
Yeah,
bigger building, you got to take you got to do the foundation a longer time. So you can't judge the process. And that is why we have to follow what I usually tell a lot of people who don't believe in God, or who don't believe in Jesus, is the reason why I believe in Jesus and the Holy Spirit is because, number one, I've tried everything. I've
yeah,
tried everything, and I've tried it all of myself. Um, and also, number two is when you feel the presence of the Holy Spirit, whether you're at church or whether you have a certain prayer, it's just something that you can't describe. Like sometimes I felt like there was times where I would feel completely like that drunk feeling, but
right.
like my body's completely numb, and that's when the Holy Spirit is there. So that's not, it's not Reiki, it's not, all of these other, newly aged things that people try to manipulate. That's all manipulation.
Of
Psychic,
course.
all manipulation. I used to be part of that stuff too, like Reiki and getting my psychic readings and all of this stuff.
What do
All
you
of that
mean by raking? What does that mean?
Reiki. It's a they call it universal energy healing. So they have these Reiki masters that you basically go to, like an office, and they put their hands on you, like an hour process. They put their hands on each chakra to like open it
Ah,
and
okay.
heal it. And like listen, if you're watching this and you're into that and stuff like that, I'm not judging anybody. Like I'm here just to show love to everybody.
Right.
But what I'm saying is what the truth is in my life, and what the truth Jesus showed me is I can't be part of that. Because if I'm going to other religions or other ideologies for healing, then that means that my belief in the Bible isn't isn't sound. It's like
Mm,
we can't be double minded. You know what I'm saying? And this does not to say that you can't learn from people who don't believe in Jesus. Like I read other books from other people who believe in other religions all the time. Whether in business or health or like, yeah, like we can't be like Christians get a bad rep of being these dumb Christians because all they do is read the Bible. No, like you got to be very informed. You got to be eclectic. You got to have your wide array of viewpoints in life. That's why I was at that party, like because I wanted to learn more about how people think, how
mm.
people of certain parties, other like whether it's left or right or whatever people believe. I like to learn why people do the things they do. I think my essential foundation core is I always love to know why people do the things they do, and why do they want to do that? Like, what is their motivation, and why do they believe in what they believe in? So that's like my core foundation that I'm always trying to figure out with certain people. And that's why I always think and talk deep, because I think everything goes through that filter. But what I think, I'm gonna get to your question. What I was saying was that the biggest thing why I believe in God and Jesus is because of how my life is turning out now, with following the promptings of the Holy Spirit and following the leading of the Holy Spirit. You get wisdom, you get a firm foundation. Things just start happening that just seem like miracles,
Right.
that you're like, whoa, how did this happen? You start, like, example, I was in prayer about somebody, about my friend, and I told him that I had a vision that he had holes in his house, on his roof, and some guy with a somber face came out, and I was like, dude, no one told me about this. I just got this vision, and he was like, bro, that's crazy. He lives in Louisiana. I live in New York. He was like, bro, that's crazy, because I had roofers come to my house because I had holes in my roof.
Oh,
And my mom was having hard times with him, and that was a sign for us to cancel with him, because he wasn't building. He was trying to scam us with the price. So, like, things like that always happen. But also just your testimony, like, he healed my health, he healed my way of thinking, he got me out of culture, he got me out of, we have to be in the world and not of it, but he got me out of so many things that I would have still been in if I wasn't for God. Where do I see myself? Man, because I think when you start realizing how much power you have, actually how much power you have with the Holy Spirit inside of you, I started to realize, man, I have so many gifts and talents and dreams and visions, and I want to do so many of these things. And God has anointed me, not just talent in fashion, but also, in writing, and also in producing, and also in acting, like so many other industries. So my goal for 2022, I don't know if you saw the link, but I have a children's book coming out. Um,
mm,
I also I'm also in process of getting a play out in 2022 as well. And then I have a sneaker brand, that I'm going to come out with a completely different collection. So those are like the three things that I'm going to be focusing on this year in their interim, while I'm still, trying to be, I'm just trying to be the best version of myself every single day, and whether that's, sending a text to someone saying that I'm thinking about them, um, or even, like, I had a coworker whose uncle died, and I told him, like, listen, I'll be praying for you, like little stuff like that goes a long way.
right. Yeah, there was analogy, or the notion of building a brick house, right? Like one brick at a time. It's like these little things that you do day in and day out, and you're just doing them, and then without looking up, you're just working, working, working. But then one day you realize, like, oh shit, I have four walls,
Yeah.
right? And then you're building all the other rooms and stuff, and then you realize, oh wow, like I have all the rooms filled out, like, and the little things like that you're talking about is just maybe sending a text, or trying to stay aware of where you are in the world, and realizing I wasn't in a good place, and actually changing your life. That's really commendable, because it isn't always the case. Like, some people just don't ever make that move, and then they're either alcoholic, or addicted to pornography or whatever, and 20 years has gone by, and they're really stuck in the same place because they didn't just shift, or they didn't listen to the signs.
Mm.
or they had an ego about what it is that they thought they were supposed to do in the world, And it sounds to me like you're very open to just exploring. You're saying, okay, well, I have all this aptitude for all of these different things. So let me come out with this. Let me test the waters here. You know what I mean? Like you're sort of playing, and I think that's really the essence of creativity, which is play.
Mm-hmm.
The freedom to just be open to whatever's coming, receiving, and then turn it back around into something creative and productive. Whether or not it gives you financial success, hopefully it gives you tons of it, but that's not really the point necessarily. The point is to self-expression, and I respect that, and I appreciate that there are more people there are still people out there really putting in an effort to do that.
Thank you, man. I appreciate that.
For sure. There's an element of that play I think I lost in being an actor, which is part of the reason I think I had to walk away a little bit from the industry. Um, it's a business. It's a very successful business, brings in billions of dollars every year, brings tons of joy to people's lives. But I just found myself sort of stuck with no real creative outlet. And the stuff that was being brought, the stuff I was being exposed to, it didn't move me. It didn't move me the way it used to. It didn't speak to me. There isn't much of a sense of play. Most of the movies coming out are like remakes or sequels.
Yeah.
I mean, Matrix just came out with a fourth. What do we need a fourth Matrix for?
It's just
3 wasn't enough.
Yeah.
And I love the Matrix. The first 2, phenomenal. The third one, kind of okay. You know what I mean? But all of these sequels and prequels, what it's telling me and what I'm seeing from the industry is there's a lack of originality, or at the very least, there's a real fear to be original and to be truly creative. Because when you create something anew or you repackage something, it takes courage.
Right.
Because you could sink $20 million into a project and it only made 10.
Right.
Now I understand there's a business aspect to the industry, but you cannot create new culture without taking that step, without saying, you know what, let's step out of the comfort zone and make this new thing happen.
Absolutely.
And so that's why I say I commend you for that, and I respect you, because it doesn't. People don't realize the amount of courage it takes to be truly creative and to really actually make something, produce it, and to ship it out for other people to see and to judge. In essence,
Thank you, man.
We don't know how it's going to be received,
Yeah. Well, I definitely want to commend you for doing that too, man, because you have the self-awareness to know, like, and I saw your reels too. I saw your reels online. Like, you're a good actor, bro.
Thanks,
and I'm sure that something will open up, or you create something that's going to be authentic to, your vision. And I think that's what I've noticed too. Like, so during the pandemic, I actually stopped everything for a while. Like, I took a hiatus for a good amount of for a good amount of time, because I'm like, yo, wait, what are my motives? Why am I why am I in the fashion industry? Why am I in the industry? Like, I'm not trying to make it in the industry. Like, I think God is telling me I have to create my own thing in order to move culture. That is what I feel like, that is what I would be called to do. So, with that series on trend, so my biggest dream is, with all these things I'm doing, is I'm basically creating I already have like a agency, but I want to create a conglomerate digital media company that is focused on creating authentic content for people to consume. It's funny. Do you know about PureFlix?
No.
It's like the Christian version of Netflix. So it's not. There's no.
Yeah, I think I might have heard. I think I might have seen a.
There's no like negative. Like, there's no like crazy on it.
There's no underage girls twerking. You mean in a French movie?
Yeah.
You heard about that movie? That was the most horrendous thing I've ever seen in my whole life.
I never heard about that. No.
Yeah, so there's this movie. I forget what it's called, but it's a French movie, and it's no joke. It's like 11-year-old girls twerking, wow. And then Netflix lost millions of subscribers because of it, because it was like a large portion of them were conservative, because it was just like, what are you showing? And it was really legitimately, it was disturbing. Um, and freedom of speech, people are allowed to put what they want to, whatever. But there's just certain lines that I don't think are
Yeah.
should be crossed. But
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I think the next level for I think I don't think I'm gonna go the pure flicks route. Like
mm.
I think sometimes, I mean, let's be honest, like Christian movies can be can be really corny sometimes, and
Yeah. It's a little
um,
heavy-handed sometimes.
yeah. But I think creating a story that's authentic and it doesn't have to involve nudity. It doesn't have to involve like crazy, gory violence and stuff like that. You can still show the story, but it doesn't. It's always about the spirit behind it. What is the agenda? Because I feel like I can watch certain things, and when you have discernment, you're like, oh, what are they trying to show here? Like what's the meaning behind this here? So, also too about play and creativity, I felt like I lost a lot of my play during the pandemic a little bit because, I stopped the acting classes. I stopped a lot of things because
Right.
I was just tired, first off. I mean, as we all were. And what I realize now is that we all have different roles. Like, I'm gonna, going to work, I'm gonna have to play a different role. When I do my music, it's like, like Beyonce, and then when she goes on stage, she's like Sasha Fierce.
Mm.
When I do my music, I get back to my Bronx dude. Like, I'm gonna do whatever I gotta do. I'm gonna say whatever I gotta say. I'm gonna talk in slang. I'm gonna, do my thing. And when I'm in fashion mode, it's like a different Kevin. So we all have different versions of ourselves. And I
Right.
think for me, I had to learn, oh, okay, it's okay that I have those different versions of myself. It's like Jay-Z, like, sometimes you have to go business mode, sometimes you got to go creative mode. Like, sometimes you got to go finance mode, sometimes you got to go investment mode. And I think it's juggling all those. But I think the foundation here is that what you said about the spirit and how, like you said about empathy and all that. So when you have the Holy Spirit inside of you, the Spirit of the living God, you don't have to remember all of these things, because when you have the Spirit of God inside of you, He will let you know what to do or how to act. You'll be convicted to do a certain thing. So you don't have to remember, oh, I should do this, I should do that, I should act a certain way. Because when you have the fruits of the Holy Spirit, I can't remember all the fruits, but it was like, gentleness, kindness, all of those fruits of the Holy Spirit, it'll flow out of you naturally.
Mm.
So, you know, I'm just excited about what's next. But I'm also excited to see what's this new stage of manhood for this generation, and also creativity. I think we're still in the pandemic. Things are, especially New York, it's rising again. So it's curious to see what's going to happen. But I'm just excited to see how men like us are going to move in this next generation, and how can we create content that just doesn't, you know, focus on women twerking or sex or violence, but something that can be a nuance, something nuanced that can still give an amazing story.
Well, it used to be that way.
Yeah,
They used to put story was the story, and in terms of humanism, right? The human experience and showing human beings themselves. That's really what Shakespeare was about. That's what Chekhov is about. That's what Moliere is about. I mean, this whole new notion is in the last 30 years or whatever. This is all new. In terms of the women twerking and stuff like that. Look, I like TNA as much as the next dude, bro. Like I'm on Instagram, whatever. You know what I mean? I look at the girls, but I believe a lot of that stuff is actually meant to be a distraction from
absolutely.
what's actually important, right? Because for men, our addiction is pornography and video
Absolutely.
games. For women, their addiction is Instagram likes or Facebook likes or Snapchat or whatever, right? Like that's what their addiction is. Shopping, consumerism.
Right.
And so these things, when you take them away, what are you left with? If you haven't actually developed the other side, the parts of yourself that are eternal,
Mm-hmm.
that are actually important, you're left with nothing. You're left with a void, which is I think part of the reason too why people don't give them up, or why all of these so-called blockbusters. I love blockbusters, but everything's got to be a blockbuster. I love superhero movies, but not everything has to be a superhero movie, right? Like, um, I think that these things are being developed because there is a vapidness in the culture, and the gatekeepers have become vapid or afraid to actually have any substance. And then everybody, the population itself has actually become afraid of having any substance, or maybe just doesn't have any to begin with. Part of the reason why I'm doing what I'm doing, one of my dreams is to own my own streaming network and studio, simply because like a lot of the stuff that I'm seeing, it's just like I'm not moved by it at all.
Right.
You know what's being presented in front of me is if it's either one of two things. It's either like I was saying before, it's like things blowing up or whatever, or it's politics. I don't go to the movies to be hit over the head with your political affiliation. I could care less.
Right.
Who you vote for is none of my business, but I go to the movie to see myself. And that's actually what human beings, that's what actors, artists, that's what they're actually doing, is they're showing us ourselves. Right?
Right.
Great art does. But we've lost sight of that as a culture. And so you're right. I think that it is the responsibility of the people that notice that, the artists, and even the gatekeepers themselves, and to promote that and move us back into the direction that I think we need to go and that we've always been. Because I think there is a lack of people. Again, I go back to this: is people forget that there are eternal truths. There are things that unite all of humanity, all of mankind, that are universal, and they are always true. And that is what the humanities are supposed to connect us with. There's a reason why Shakespeare plays are still performed today. There are no kings running around. There are no court jesters running around. There are no soldiers marching off and performing a speech before Agincourt. They're not doing that anymore. And yet, those plays are still relevant today. Why? Because you're talking about human beings. That's who you're presenting. And when artists and we as a society get back to that, we'll be in a good place. But if you do that and you connect us with the deeper things that are actually important, then you can't sell us shit we don't need. You know what I mean? You can't keep us locked into stupid shows that reality television is garbage. It's complete garbage. It fries your mind. It destroys your mind. And so, look, again, going back to the capitalist thing, I believe we live in a capitalist society, which is why we have so much great stuff in this country, why we can do what we can do. But there is a negative side to it. There's a shadow side to it where everything is fair game. And I think there should be sanctity. There should be things that are sacred. There is a reason that there's a Sabbath. There is a reason that Sundays are reserved for church. There is a reason that a husband and wife's relationship is private and no one else can go and infect that relationship with all their nonsense. That's their business, the way that they conduct themselves. There is a reason why the father and the mother have dominion over the children and not the state. There is sanctity. But people want to make us believe like there isn't and there shouldn't be. Right. And I think that's where a lot of these things are sort of mixing and matching, and you get all this like weird androgyny and like people being confused about certain things. Like it's crazy. There's no form. Well, there's no form to anything anymore. There's no form, and then there's no hierarchy, and there's nothing to reach for.
Yeah.
And so I think it's great. I'm on the same mission, man. I think a lot of the guys that I've spoken to, there is a masculine renaissance. There's an awakening with men happening, and they're kind of like, hold on a second, man, something's up.
Yeah. Well, I was gonna say, dude, one of the biggest things that took away not my masculinity from my whole life, but also for a lot of men, is pornography.
Right.
I started watching porn when I was 15, and it wasn't until when I really started living in truth, like 2 years ago when I stopped, that I was like, holy moly. Like I remember my first 2 months without watching it, like my life completely changed. Like my brain changed, my power, my internal like I'm like, yo, I'm so motivated. Like,
Mm-hmm.
it's crazy. And, I'm not going to front. Like during the pandemic, I kind of got, you see one thing and then your brain lights up. You want to go back into it. But actually, I downloaded this app. This podcast is not sponsored by it, by the way. It's called Brain Buddy, and if anyone's hearing this, any guys hearing this, I highly recommend it. You get to check in every day. There's motivators on there. You have a good support community. If you can't, leave it. And I'm like, wow, like I've not watched porn for this long.
Wow.
And it every day you get like a new leaf on your tree. You have a tree of life. You get like a flower. You get like a tree. It's cool. It's super cool. And I think what happens, I think the number one thing that God gave me and that God gives everyone is discipline.
Right.
My favorite verse is God did not give us a spirit of fear, but he gave us a spirit of power, love, strength, sound mind, and discipline. And what that basically means is that when an opportunity comes up and you feeling that temptation, Jesus also says that he always gives you a way out. He will not tempt someone more than you can bear. So you can always say no. And when you say no, when you make that decision, you grow from that and your flesh becomes weaker. The whole point of this life is to dominate our flesh with our spirit. When we're living through the spirit, we're living in life. When we're living in our flesh, we're living in death. And what's happening in Hollywood, I don't want to get into this whole conspiracy theory crap, all this, but like how it's taken by the enemy and the devil. Like, well, anyways, the spirit of darkness, whether these directors or producers even know it or not, they're being marketed and influenced by the spirit of darkness to market sex, lust, all these things that get you addicted.
Yep.
To these things, and that goes for Instagram, TikTok, all of this. It get in porn. The point of the enemy is not to attack the women. Yes, he attacks women too, but it's to attack the men, because once you take the man and you demasculinize him, the family is done.
It's dead.
When you look at the kids who never had a father, 70% of those kids, they either drop out, they go to jail, they have bad grades, they have problems at school, they don't end up becoming as successful as they should be. It all starts with the father. And we have to, like you said, if this masculine renaissance that's going to happen, that's already kind of happening, we really have to be aware of our decisions every single day, because even when I'm tempted, I always say, as it says in the word, like, I'm the head, not the tail. I'm he gave me many nations to be the king of, right? God wants us to be king on this earth. So if I make this stupid decision, then that's also going to affect millions of generations under me. If I really think I'm a king, if I really think I'm the king that God told me I'm going to be, like a King David or King Solomon, like wise like that, why am I going to make this stupid decision for a couple minutes of pleasure than say no, and then something else greater will come after that, And it's hard, it's tough, but it's worth it.
What you said is spot on. Every time a rival faction wanted to destroy another faction or whatever, the first thing they did was to kill all the men or to castrate them. That's the first thing they did before they did anything else. And American men, Western men, because I'm including the Anglosphere, the UK, parts of Western Europe, was really UK, Argentina, Australia, New Zealand, the Anglosphere, South Africa, or they are psychologically castrated, right? Pornography, if you're always looking at porn, right? The purpose of porn is to get the sexual release. It's to come. It's to ejaculate at the end of it. If you're not doing that, what you should be doing is going out and finding women, having relationships with women. But if you don't have those relationships with women, then porn is right there and it's easy. But every time that you go on it, you're not going out and pursuing that with other women. And pursuing sexual relationships with other women is more than just sex. It's the connection with somebody else, it's the creativity of it, it's the fun, it's the whatever, it's the chaos, it's the drama, whatever it is. You grow through relationships with other women, but if you're not doing it and you're sitting at your house all day in front of your computer, you there's no impetus for you to go out and do it. And part of masculine growth is to be able to walk across a room when you see a pretty girl and say, "Hey, my name is Laris. What's your name?" Right? You're just talking, you're engaging. She might tell you to go fuck yourself. She might tell you, "I love you. You're the greatest man in the world." Right? Whatever it is. Whatever it is, right? But like,
Yeah.
you got to go and you got to have a conversation with her. You got to engage with her. And that's really where the courage comes from, because
Right.
thousands of years ago, our ancestors, if I went and talked to the wrong girl, I'd be killed. I
Right.
might be killed by the most dominant man or whatever. She was the wrong girl. So that's what it is. It's like every time that you do that, you're growing a little bit more. But if you don't have to do it because you're stuck with porn or video games all day, you stay a boy, you stay a child
Right.
forever. It
Mm,
distracts you.
right.
It's the same thing with women and Instagram. It is unnatural for a woman to get 10,000 likes on a picture. You know what I mean? Like, at the most she ever got was 50 because of the 100 and 200, 300 guys or 400 guys in a respective village.
Yeah.
It's only recent that it's only the last 10 years where a girl legitimately could be liked by men in Saudi Arabia when she lived in Pennsylvania somewhere. You know what I mean?
Right. Absolutely.
And because she wasn't seeking all of that validation from all these men all over the world, she could focus on other things. She didn't have all this FOMO. She didn't feel like horrible about herself because maybe she only got 5,000 likes this time instead of 6,000 likes, and now she thinks she's ugly and she's garbage. Like, you know what I mean? Like, a quarter of the women in this country are on some sort of antidepressant or whatever, and I think social media is absolutely part of the reason why, because they have a distorted view of what attention really is and what interaction with another human being really is, in the same way that men have a distorted view of what sex and the opposite sex is through pornography.
Right.
I thought all girls look like that. They don't.
Yeah.
Not even they look like that, bro.
Exactly.
Like, if anybody, like, go out and Google porn stars before and after, or with or without makeup, like, it's a whole different person. It doesn't even look the same.
Yeah.
And so we have these images, and look, we all know this, man. This isn't something, I'm not the first person. We're not the first person to have this conversation, but I think that men especially need to unlearn, as you were saying in the beginning of the podcast, unlearn the things that they learned, the warped belief systems,
Mm-hmm.
and then go out and seek things that will make them grow, but also that they will act as guardians of the people around them. Because
Mm-hmm.
ultimately that's our job, right? We're sentinels. We watch the walls to make sure, the Visigoths don't come in and sack the city. But we have been distracted to such an extent over the past 30, 40, 50 years by things that are not good for us, that I think most men in the Western world, or many men, have forgotten it.
Right. Right.
Myself included in that.
Right. We're called to break the ties, break the trauma, because trauma gets passed through generation to generation.
Yeah.
So everything that my dad has struggled with, he passed it on me. So if it's not up to me to break it, then I'm gonna pass that down onto my child. So
Yeah.
now I have to really be conscious of what I do and how I think and all my actions, because I want to make sure that I leave my children something that they can, a firm foundation that they can truly work on, and you can go through the whole industry, or example, like this whole last 100 years about why um, how did men started to think like this, or industrialism, or capitalism, or men started to when the flappers started, that's when they actually started women started to become more revolutionary, because
Right.
all their men were in the war and were getting killed, so they needed attention, and like it's all this stuff. But Instagram as well, bro, I deleted my account. I was called by God to delete my account with 40,000 followers, and I was getting paid as well. But every time I signed on, I literally would get an instant headache, and I'm just like,
Mm.
God will always give you signs of where you're not supposed to be. I deleted it, and that whole, but it's about what, a year and 2 months now. Now I'm almost completely restored as far as my health. But even a year and a half ago, like I had a part of my health where I was still kind of fatigued. I'm like, why? It's Instagram,
Wow.
specifically Instagram. So that goes to show you that how much energy that Instagram takes away from people, and how you're not supposed to. You can use it, but you're supposed to use it wisely, and
Mm.
you shouldn't be on it, 24/7 as I was, you know.
Yeah, man. And I think that people are waking up to it for sure, man. They're really coming to a head, and they're just deciding, I don't know if this is worth all of these moments that are being stolen from me on this thing, or that I'm allowing to be stolen. Um, I have a finite life. If it isn't adding to your life, it's taking away from it.
Yeah, but for me, I had like a digital habits coach. Like I had like one session with him, and
Yeah.
he calculated all the days that I was losing throughout the year. I was like not even on social media, but on my phone, and I think I was on my phone like 12 hours a day.
Wow.
And but that was also with work and stuff like that.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
even with that, it's like I was on my phone about a whole month for the week, for the year. I was on my phone. So that's insane, bro.
Wow.
You take a whole month away from your life, and
Right.
then you add that up, right? You add that up, and it's like, no way. I have to change. I have to change. And that's the thing. We get, um, especially Instagram, and the way the iPhone is constructed with the notifications, and I have no notifications on my phone. When people call me, they know to leave a voicemail, because I don't. It's always on silent. I
Yeah.
don't, now I live a life where I'm disciplined. I get up early. I do my journaling. I do my workout. I try not to touch my email or text until after my morning routine at all, because I have to make sure I get my mindset and mind ready for the day. Uh,
Mm.
and you have to also have everything scheduled in your day, so you won't just go on your phone and check YouTube and just go down the rabbit hole,
Right.
So
Well, listen, man. This has been a great conversation. Thanks for being as candid as you've been. For sharing your story, your life philosophy, your faith. And I'm glad that men like you exist. It was a great conversation we had at the party, and it's been a great conversation today. And that's all I'm going to say, man. And I think that the more men have conversations, and try to really parse this stuff out, figure this stuff out, and really work through it, and get back to what we're really supposed to be, I think that the better everyone else is going to be for it. Men, women, children, future generations, for sure. So thanks, brother.
thank you, bro. Thank you for having me, and I want to thank you, man, for just being open to this dialogue
Yeah.
and letting me share what I want to share, and also just being one of those men who is pushing this narrative of how us men should be in this
Right.
generation. So
Thank you. I appreciate that, man. For those of you guys watching, Kevin's stuff is going to be down in the description below. I'm going to put all that stuff down, and the episode should be up in a couple of days. All right. So this is Laris of Heroes and Men with KB. Check him out. The man's got serious swag. He's a very talented dude, and I'm glad to have him. All right, peace.
And